let's move on to a topic that has a little bit more juice in the current narrative. Or like, this is sort of the controversy of the week, and I'm talking, of course, about the Alex Morse situation in Massachusetts involving the sort of the Amherst College Democrats and basically the world's worst attempt to honeypot someone that almost succeeded were it not for Ryan Grimm and The Intercept. Like, this guy's life.
Well, no, this guy, Daniel Boguslaw, I swear to God, that is his name, Boguslaw. And I'm sorry, you have to change it. Not only because you do not practice law, but because we're not in a Thomas Pynchon novel about Appbusters. But yes, this guy too. So we often get shit for accidentally leaving off the less famous byline, and we can't do that again, especially if his name is Boguslaw.
I respect Mr. Boguslaw. I respect all Polish journalists.
I assume his ancestors were named Boguslawski, and they were like, one of these days I'm going to get out of this Chicago sausage factory.
Okay, then, but let me do my best to narrate what exactly went down with this thing. So, like, there's this guy, Alex Morse, who is the mayor of Holyoke, Massachusetts. He was elected mayor when he was 22 years old and was this sort of like political Doogie Howser wonder kid, who's now running a challenge against this guy, Richie Neal, who is a Democratic congressman from Massachusetts, who is, by all accounts, one of the worst people in Congress. Like, he is both the tax law and the hospital lobbies like man in Washington, like a really, really bad Democrat. And by all accounts, Morse was challenging him as a progressive and doing well. Then it came out that like a college Democrat group put out this statement where essentially they said, like, we have to distance ourselves from him or rescind our endorsement of him because of these very vague insinuations that he was like some sexual impropriety among him and college students, or that he was sexually harassing their members or had maybe even sexually assaulted someone. And they got really far with that, despite the fact that there was no actual allegation of any impropriety. There were just these vague intonations about him making people uncomfortable, or that
there was no accuser even.
There was no accuser of any of this. Yeah. And then it got weirder and weirder, because when it started, I was like, well, if this is all there is, this doesn't really. And then Sunrise Movement backed away from him, and it was this weird thing where it was just like, you read about it and you're waiting to find the thing that's like, well, what this is about, but there was nothing there. Then it turns out that this whole thing was basically, there were these basically like Karl Rove, Lee Atwater types in college, but for the Democratic Party, which is like one of the most blood curdling things imaginable, who and now according to like leaked chats have been planning for a year to find this guy's dating profile, match with him, and trick him into being horny to ruin his campaign, get him out of the race so that they could get a fucking internship with this guy, Richie Neal. And
it's a year-long plan to make this guy come. And we pulled it off. A whole Ocean's 11 montage.
But here's the weird thing, though.
I got the best balls guy in Azerbaijan.
And here's the weird thing, though, is like, even when that came out, I kept waiting to read like really embarrassing text messages, or him just being horny in a way that's you know, if any of our that's awkward or bad or something. And I swear to God, what they actually had him on was him just like, if you look at like the chats of him again, and these are men he matched with who are like in their like mid-20s. He's like, we're talking about a 5 to 7 year age difference between these guys, and they're like connecting with him and messaging him, and he's just saying things like, hey, like, how was your weekend? Like, I spent some time with my mom, like, cool. It was just the absolutely most innocent, above board. Like, there has never been any conversation on Grindr that has been more less overtly sexual than this guy talking to these, he like wanted to date someone. He wanted to
he wanted a boyfriend.
He wanted a boyfriend.
And I mean, the fact that he's like a wunderkind or whatever means that he's probably pretty sexually stunted. But he's like fucking the most G-rated gay man I've ever even heard of.
Yeah, I mean, Morse, like, the only scandal here is that Morse could be thrown off of Tinder and Grindr for people seeing him as wasting their time with his polite small talk and genuine interest in their lives.
Showhole!
Yeah. But he's just like, it's so polite. It reminds me of like one of my mom's friends talking to me. And what a nice man.
So
Yeah, it's like, no. I'm swiping left. I do not want to show this guy showing up with a heliotrope bouquet and take me on a fucking bicycle built for two.
Oh my god! He's the 1920s homosexual gentleman.
Yes.
But here's the thing though, like what was going on here was actually so fucking rotten and evil of what they tried to do to this guy, and like what essentially worked up until the point that their idiotic like House of Cards like plot was fairly easily exposed. But had it not been for that intercept piece, like it largely would have worked. And like I spent the whole week like reading about this, and the way people were talking about this guy, they kept using words like survivors and sexual assault and stuff. And it was like, first of all, no one was alleging anything of the sort. There was no accuser even to begin with. And I think the one guy he actually had sex with didn't even know he was mayor. So how funny is that? Like,
how do you not lead with that?
Yeah.
What an adorable little scamp.
One of the worst abuses of power when you forget to do it.
Yeah. And
this is, I gotta say too, like, you know, like, shout out to Seeking Derangements. Like, they were on this pretty early and, like, you know, sniffed a rat, I think, the way we're all like, But, like, this is just literally old school homophobia.
Absolutely.
Like, this is literally like, by the way, you know, they're all also pedophiles. Like, this plays into a really paranoid, like, old school homophobic trope.
Yeah, like chicken
and
hawk.
These people are 100% willing to invoke that and stoke those fires for an internship.
Yeah.
A fucking internship. They're not even getting like a boat or money or something cool. Like, this wouldn't even make a good movie in the 90s about, like, you know, about someone entrapping someone. Like, this fucking sucks. It is the nastiest, most underhanded, sleazy, careerist move that totally, again, builds on a kind of latent bigotry and tropes. They're doing tropes, but it's for nothing, for an internship. God, if you're gonna like sell your soul, get something good.
That is just the most pathologically depressing thing about this is they're finding this nice man who they're planning for a year to sell down the river, humiliate, destroy his life. And it's for the prospect of maybe by the time that they're 35, they'll make $50,000 a year, helping keep hospitals expensive for everyone, making every hip break visit life ruining.
It's so bleak. And yeah, once again, shout out Seeking Derangements, Ben and Palma. Early
Jacques. Love the addition of Jacques, by the way.
Jacques is the wild card.
I love Jacques. He makes the fucking show. Yeah.
Well, like we said, I mean, it was easy for them to get on this story early because, of course, Alex Morse did groom Palma, and in fact, we've all been grooming Palma. We love to. He's so groomable. He's such a nice little guy.
Yeah. Just a sweet.
I love to rustle his hair and groom him.
What can you say? It's like Bob Dylan said: you got to groom somebody.
Yeah. If you don't love the one you groom the one you're with.
Yes.
But like, here's the thing, though. After, like, okay, I was willing to call bullshit on this story before the Intercept article came out. After the Intercept article came out, it was, like, undeniable what was going on here. And then it wasn't just, like, college students, like, stoking some dumb sex panic or hysteria, but, like, actual, like, really bloodless, evil, cynical, like, rat fucking of a progressive
dirty
candidate.
Tricks. Political dirty tricks.
On behalf of one of the most rotten Democratic representatives in the entire Congress, right? But even after that, like, there has still been so many fucking people that are trying to salvage their fucking the idiotic position that they staked out in this by saying essentially like, well, there may have been nothing wrong in this case, but it's actually still really gross the way people talked about it, and like, it just shows you that, like, they weren't ready to believe survivors. And I'm like, what survivors? There was no one who survived anything here other than a couple guys who, like, messaged him on fucking Instagram. What What the fuck are you talking about?
This Morse guy just survived a traumatizing experience. Like, I don't know the guy. He's probably pretty far to the right of me or whatever. He's definitely weird. I don't trust child prodigies. But, like, having that happen to you, that is horrifying. And when you go back and you read about, like, the satanic ritual abuse panic, which I think also people sort of misread as this purely cultural phenomenon, and they don't think about the fact that it had a lot to do with the reality that women were going to work, and people all of a sudden had these anxieties about childcare, and they were imagining all of these dangerous things. I think these things do come from a political and economic sort of context, but this is just sex panic and shit like that aside. This is just some evil, bloodless little Amherst college Democrat targeting, stalking, and developing a frankly very thin, weak sort of conspiracy against what is apparently the most G-rated gay man in the universe. And it worked. So what does that say about our moment?
And what's so scary is that people were willing to do this, even though this isn't just another like gossip item that this gets disguised as a political issue, in that this is a guy running for Congress. This is an actual race with actual stakes to it. And people were completely willing to just throw out any context of like what matters in this moment to just indulge in a knee-jerk reactionary response. And then even after being proven wrong, not being able to back down because no one's lived experience can be wrong. And so my outrage has to have a real basis. And, it could be both true that this was a ripoff, that we could be true that this was a rat fuck, but also that it's kind of messed up to try to do something like that. It could be both things. No, it fucking can't. No. It can't be both things if you want to live in the fucking world and have your actions affect it.
And this wasn't even some sympathetic, like traumatized, there are really tragic, horrifying incidences of false accusations, particularly before like Me Too was a thing. And what they tended to find out is that, the women or people that made those accusations often had horrible abusive lives and experienced abuse in different ways. This guy wasn't even that. He has no fucking excuse. He was not a fucking like Tawana Brawley getting like abused by her stepdad at home. Like, he was not a gay Ella Ewell. He's like a fucking piece of shit, little evil, sneaky bastard. And again, for an internship.
Democratic James O'Keefe. Think about James O'Keefe. He's the same kind of person as James O'Keefe.
Just with a few different cultural affectations.
This guy who wanted a Richie Neal internship was a young man with the soul of a fucking weasel who was hoping to upgrade to the soul of a fucking swine.
Disgusting.
This whole affair made me think of something that Sean Moorhead on Twitter said, which is that he fears a resurgence of 80s, 90s style conservative law and order hysteria, but using this sort of liberal Tumblr diaspora language. That there will be things like, hey, you could be against prisons and realize that Willie Horton's kind of gross. that's the synthesis of the future.
That happened in the 80s and the 90s with all kinds of things. Like, I mean, like the whole Tipper Gore shit was an unholy marriage between feminists and like right-wing evangelical women who are like, yes, listening to Prince will turn your child into a rapist. Like, this has happened before. Mm-hmm. And it's dangerous. It's incredibly dangerous.
And like,
because it's too the thing that no one is willing to admit in any side of the culture war are that these are two different flavors of social conservatism that often complement each other.
Yeah.
And, no, but like to your point, Amber, I mean, like, you know, what are the actual ramifications of this? And like, you know, when you're looking at this case, you know, on the one hand, it's like it's easy to just blame it on like, you know, dumb baby brain college students and SJ dubs, blah, blah, blah. I mean, this was the machinations of the rotten, evil Democratic Party, but I'm sorry, a lot of fucking people went along with it and they fell for it really fucking easily. And the thing is, it's like, you know, in the broader context of like, you know, oh, why be so hard on the young people or certain aspects of like, or Warren voters or like, you know, the extremely woke people. And the answer is like on their own, maybe it's not so bad or doesn't deserve, you know, such extreme invective or condemnation, at least from other people. I mean, from us, we can still do it. But what I mean is that like, I think this should show is like all this shit is a huge fucking liability. And if you make like that level of credulity, like not just like a personal failing on your part, but actually a political virtue, then I'm sorry, like that you're a liability to like even whatever meager liberal reforms you're trying to achieve, because there's absolutely nothing that they can't fucking get you with, or they can't hold over with you if you're not willing to toe the line on something as fucking clear as this.
You're a fucking sucker, and frankly, that's, you know, that's a very weak link. But again, like, you know, I'm really fascinated by this stuff. And again, I think it doesn't come out of nowhere. It's not all whatever. The whole SJ dub thing, it has way more to do with the fact that I think feminism is very much an unfinished project and turned into this liberal fucking chaos demon of careerism that drove everyone insane. And women realized, oh, I got all these things, but they all suck because I have no economic or financial security. And I think there was like this period of like, you know, the naughty oddies where like sexual libertinism was the way to be like a good feminist. And then we're experiencing kind of a backlash from that. Like, again, I think that this stuff it's not just like kids gone wild. This is a response to the economic realities of a generation that falls in line with a multi-generational campaign to try and figure out some way to like grapple with sex politically and socially. Nonetheless, it is actually dangerous. It is the shit that happened with the satanic ritual abuse stuff. Like, it had long-standing. I mean, we think it's like funny. Everyone believed this shit because a 4-year-old did it. And then I saw Satan and the baby winked at me. But like, it's actually horrible. They locked up people who were usually poor. They locked up a lot of immigrants, gay people. Of course, definitely, obviously fell on gay people. They were like, well, these are obviously the people abusing our children. Like, there were like some like Mexican lesbians that were like in jail for years and years and years based on something that like was pulled out of a 3-year-old. No, I pulled out of a story. I don't mean physically. If they pulled something out of them, yes, maybe do an investigation.
It's like when a dog eats like the string that's on a fucking roast beef.
You just got to keep pulling. But like, this stuff does result in like major legislative changes. It does put people in jail. It does create a more atomized and frankly like bigoted society. Like, they were making real advances in gay rights, and then AIDS happened, and suddenly these people were stigmatized. And then the satanic ritual abuse thing also didn't fucking help. There were like, men were starting to get jobs in like childcare, and sort of like that became, but it was usually like gay men, you know, the pioneeresses, if you will. And then all of a sudden, people were nervous about having fairies around their fucking kids because there was this old idea of like the pedophile gay man floating around. This shit is actually dangerous.
But consider like the like I said, the terms that were used to describe even like the what was being alleged, but like no one ever actually like there was no there was basically a guy who was like 31 matching on a dating app with someone who's like 25 and pursuing them romantically. And there was just this idea that like, oh, the power gap is so imbalanced that like even if the person technically consents to it, it's still like not cool illegal for like the person to seek it out in the first place. And then they were like, oh, well, he's a mayor. And I'm like, realistically, how much, like a mayor of a town of 2,000 people, how much of a fucking power gap exists between them and a grad student in the town where they fucking like that they're mayor of? Like, like really, this was not, let's say, Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, where one was the president of the fucking United States and the other one was his intern. And then there's
like
this issue about
cities in America where being a mayor even matters.
Is Pete Buttigieg a groomer?
Yeah, good point.
Pete Buttigieg was nearly a full decade. Nearly a full decade older than Chasten when he met him.
That's true.
Is he a groomer?
Suspicious.
I think the most maddening thing to all this, and we frequently talk about how hypocrisy means nothing, but it is seeing people who are evidently fine with Bill Clinton, the serial rapist, having a fucking speaking slot at the 2020 DNC, making hay out of this. How does that work? How does that work? How do you want to make common cause with these fucking people? Do you think they even care about this? Or do you think they care about this because they care about Richard Neal?
I mean, it's just they don't even care about Richard Neal. It could be anyone.
It could be any. It could be any essential NPC filling that role of keeping hospitals ruinous for people to visit.
I have a suggestion. Raise the age of consent for aspiring PMC people to 35. They can't handle it.
It does seem like they have a hard time with the concept. Like, maybe you guys should just time out on sex until you figure out that, like, it's not always going to be great, and that seeking to make it that way is impossible.
And maybe wait until you're professionally established enough to where you're not going to, I don't know, develop an incredibly convoluted catfishing scheme to get an internship.
That's some psycho stuff.
Anyway, I mean, I don't even know much about his campaign, but I gave money to Alex Morse because I felt so fucking bad about what happened to him. Because it's just
that's gonna be traumatizing.
This shit was just so fucking evil, and it just even though they were caught out dead to rights, I still see so many people holding out some way to fucking salvage this thing for themselves, to be just to avoid saying I was wrong, I'm a sucker.
I didn't give money to Alex Morse, but I made multiple Grindr accounts and set the location to Western Massachusetts. I'm constantly matching with him and engaging in pleasant conversations with him, asking him about his day, saying, "Oh, you marched in a parade? That was so interesting. I bet that was really fun for you." And so I'm just giving him little pick-me-ups.
That was literally one of the messages. I just did a wine tasting and I'm marching in a parade tomorrow. And they're like,
I cut a ribbon today.
It's so wholesome.
He was the mayor.
It's so wholesome.
He was the mayor of Busytown.
Yeah.
After a hard day of driving around in a big Apple, I'd like to take you to a soda shop.
And I don't even know how they couldn't find something more incriminating on this guy. How squeaky clean do you need to be? Imagine anyone on this podcast, if they wanted to, I don't know, develop a conspiracy about us, it would be so much easier.
Well, Amber, that's the scary part.
He left empty jewel pods all over the floor of his apartment to hurt visitors.
But that's the scary part, though, because it took them a year to set this up, and they had nothing. They had absolutely nothing, but they still managed to basically get away with it, were it not for this one investigative reporting piece on it to to make clear what was going on. If that didn't happen, it would have fucking worked. And here's the thing. The last thing I want to say about this is it's a point Liz Brunig made on Twitter that really stuck with me, and the people who actually did this conspiracy, not the fucking dopes who all went along with it and are now trying to backpedal, the people who actually designed it to get a fucking internship, in their chats and the shit that came out about how they were talking about it, it was very clear that they understood that if they could prove or get any sort of anything that suggested that this guy was a young man seeking out love and a romantic partnership or even just sex with another human being, that would be enough. that's all it would take. And it's just like that's a very disturbing thing to think about, because it's just like, love and sex is something that like all human beings seek out and need at a certain level. And as you mature into adulthood and get older, like it's something that you realize from just like something switches in your head, and then you realize, oh God, like the rest of my life is going to be defined by this. Oh fuck, guess I'm shackled to this. But the idea is like nobody gets out of it unscathed or unharmed, and like it's like it sucks, it's messy, but but it's necessary, and it is when done right, like the thing that makes life worth living. It's the thing that like makes us human beings, that like defines our connections to like other people and the future. And it's just
right.
It's
and
very,
some of us are out here trying to get that D, so quit fucking it up. Like, okay, defund the horny police is all I'm saying.
Well, okay. I mean,
as someone said, I forget who it was, it is easier to win the Democratic nomination if you're on the Lolita Express than if you're on Grindr.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
this does not cut both ways.
Here's the thing.
Don't ever think it does.
And like, exactly, it doesn't cut both ways. And here's the thing: like, even if you're doing it from the most like radical perspective of like ending things that we should be condemning in society, things like sexual abuse and sexual harassment, or like actually abusing a position of power to like force someone into like what would otherwise be a coercive sexual relationship. Like if you're like, it will never ever redound to your benefit of like if your cause is like, let's say, to the left of the Democratic Party, or even left of like the right wing of the Democratic Party. Like it's just coincidentally, it'll only ever work to the benefit of a fucking piece of shit like Richard Neal and the hospital lobby in this country. That should fucking tell you something about like the efficacy of like really going all in on shit like this.
Yeah, and also it will never matter to the people that don't care. Like I said this again very early on. I said, quit trying to Me Too Biden, because the people who like him don't care and it won't work on him. Like, it's just, you're using the wrong tool for the job.
You know who said they believe?
Didn't work.
You know who said they believed Biden's accusers? Kamala Harris. You're not gonna morally move these fucking people to do anything.
They don't
Stop it.
care. They believe in nothing. These men are nihilists on it.
You think we are kidding or making with the funny stuff?
That's what you think. You haven't dreamed of, Lebowski.
Yeah, we believe in nothing.
We believe in nothing, Lebowski, nothing.
And tomorrow we come back and we cut off your Johnson.
Excuse me?
I said we cut off your Johnson!
I know. I have the toy. You can't put any limits on anything I do. I poo beat my pants, and now I'm going to shoot them. I'm going to shoot my poopy pants.